Hey everybody, it's Edward Fields, aka the Cinematic New Band. I think maybe I need to brush this. So if you haven't really caught on to what I talk about here on my channel, I do a lot of building up of upcoming artists or artists that I work with. That's a really special part of it. But the other part is just kind of me exploring movies in a way that I like to explore them, which is kind of like the dark aspect of film. There'll be a little bit of everything, but that's the main thing I like to focus on when it comes to me talking about the movie stuff. I like kind of darker side of things. That continues with our next Fog Top 5, where we will be exploring 5 characters that are very menacing when they're on screen. These are the type of characters that, while on screen, make you very, very uncomfortable and are written in a way that is intentionally done to do so. The type of characters that make you squint your eyes because you're just the kind of characters that pump up the anxiety. So again, join me today as I explore the top 5 most menacing characters on screen. So now that the blood is flowing a little bit, it's time to dive on into our number 1 spot, Pennywise, the dancing clown from It. Pennywise, the new version, is in his own right very creepy. The most disturbing one for me, because I'm an old man, was the original Pennywise, played by Tim Curry. The new one, played by Swishgard, Bill Skarsgård. That guy is very well done. The guy really has the most uncanny features in an actor I've ever seen before. Just when he's just staring at you, he's like if you took Steve Buscemi, just made the evil version, the evil copy of him, but younger and I guess slightly more handsome. Those eyes. It's one thing for them to cast him based on his looks, which were very effective and helped immensely with adding to the makeup in ways that the Tim Curry Pennywise just didn't do. But his performance was also very spot on. He created an energy that just pulled you into that space with him whenever he shifted. Like the moments where he's smiling and he's laughing and he's doing his creepy Pennywise thing, you're kind of like, oh man, that's scary, that's creepy. But then when he just like goes into that void where he's like in hunting mode, that is when you're just like, what's going on here? That is a face I do not want to be in the room with. That energy is the energy that makes me numb. The creepiest thing about the original Pennywise for me when it came to him doing that same thing, because his clown energy was really, really up there, and that's what made him disturbing for me as a kid. The clown portion of him was just so, I guess, happy, even though I knew he was a bad guy. That contrast was what threw me off versus the other one that is just consistently creepy. That's another type of energy that I guess I was a little more prepared for, and maybe it's just because I'm older. But another feature were the eyes. Those really sharp eyes that he had in that first film, those eyes were dead. The energy that the new Pennywise gave whenever he pulled you into that void was the same energy I got whenever the original Pennywise had those eyes. It's just like, ooh, you knew something bad was about to happen. The reason Pennywise is first on this list is because he's disturbing. No doubt about that. I guess the disconnect where he's mainly hunting children and not a visual threat off the bat is what keeps him in this spot for me. And just because his story is so outlandishly out there, like the story behind Pennywise is far more divine than any of the characters we're gonna like explore in this video. It's just like so far removed from the real world that just the thought of Pennywise doesn't really bring on that kind of energy. Definitely a character worth exploring more about. If you haven't read any of the books, I haven't myself, and I really intend on doing that at some point just to learn more about the cosmic aspect of the story, because we really only explore like the stuff that's going on in Derry, Maine, or wherever it takes place. And that stuff is creepy, it's bizarre, it's weird, but King's like background on Pennywise is unfathomable based on what we what we explore in these films. Joseph from the movie Creep. Joseph, while probably the essentially least threatening character in this list, definitely comes with his moments that are worth noting here. We have the story of a man who is apparently dying from cancer. And so we follow a videographer who is hired to document a day of his life so that he can leave this video behind for his unborn child, but doesn't expect to be around for the birth of. It doesn't take long for not only our main character, but the spectator as well to know that something is off about Joseph. And at first you kind of accept it as lovable. Even for the main character, we just understand why he brushes off a few things, but it is obvious that this character is disturbed in certain ways. He has this thing with jump scares that's very off-putting. A few random moments of inquiry or storytelling, personal storytelling, that leave you questioning what's reality and what's not. And it's a very short film, so we kind of build up very quickly. But between the awkward moments and very bizarre stories that Joseph tells, and just his mannerisms, of course, he becomes a very unsettling character. Now, there's a lot of the story that we spend where we don't see Joseph because we are following Aaron at that point, and we find that Joseph is stalking him. But leading up to that point, we have a few moments where they're in the same room talking during the day that they're filming, where, because you know the title of the film and what it ultimately should lead to, you just are wondering when he's going to act out. There's a moment where he introduces us to this mask that he calls Peach Fuzz, and that alone is disturbing, but later on in the story, he actually uses it in a more sinister way. And this is where Aaron gets a phone call from the sister of Joseph by accident because he has his cell phone, finds out that essentially Joseph is not who he says he is, and that he, for the sake of his well-being, should leave the house. Once we have this, we're just kind of on pins and needles whenever we have a moment with Joseph. Now again, he's not nearly as intense as any of the other characters in this list, but there's a moment especially where we realize that Aaron is about to make the biggest mistake of his life by accepting a second invite into Joseph's home. Before that, we have already had enough bad vibes. He obviously had enough bad vibes and made a pretty good judgment call that it was time for him to go. He had already been paid. He thinks it's time for him to leave. And Joseph invites him in for just one more drink. Now, the scene sets the film in motion, but it's not like the fearful scene that we might have expected. However, in that one moment where we realize that Aaron is following his gut and Joseph turns around to ask him if he's sure he feels like he has to leave, the shot, the one that's primarily used for promotional reasons, is the shot we get, and it's very unsettling because we don't see Joseph's face. And even though we hear his tone of voice and he sounds innocent, he is inquiring something innocent, we just know that in that moment, he's not a good guy. And in fact, he is a very scary guy. And that is the energy that we get throughout the rest of the film. The fact that he starts off with this lovable character vibe that makes it that much more intense as we see the facade melt away. Art the clown. Art takes us into a very new realm, completely different type of character than the last two. Pennywise is very cosmic. Joseph is just a regular dude. I'm not quite sure how to describe Art. So Art is the main antagonist, or depending on how you look at it, the hero of the Terrorizer series. I only say that because he didn't really kind of feel like an antagonist until the second film, which, even though there's only 3 films with the Terrifying name, he had a couple of appearances in films before that went by a different name. And before that, he just kind of was just a character we followed doing his own messed up thing. He's a new type of slasher for anyone who has not seen the series. He is a slasher, but he's unlike any slasher you've seen before. He's, at least initially, I haven't seen the third installment, but at the end of the second one, there was a little more otherworldly stuff going on, and I see that he's come back So I'm guessing we're out of the old realistic realm now. For anyone who has not seen a Terrifier film, Art the Clown is an especially gruesome. He's not your Michael Myers, stab him a couple of times or throw him on a hook, maybe even cut you in half kind of person. He is a mutilator and will go above and beyond to gross the audience out, destroying the bodies of his kills. Art the Clown is a very scary, very menacing character. He does this smile that is just disturbing. A smile that you know is meant to give nearby victims a false sense of security, but us as the audience know that that's way too creepy to be an actual sense of security for anyone. But he stares in a way with that smile that anyone watching, before you even know who this character is expecting the absolute most terrifying thing to happen next. And he, like Pennywise, does this thing where he switches modes. And once he switches modes, you are taken into a completely different world in the film. Art the Clown smiling is undoubtedly terrifying, but Art giving you a menacing stare is something that you know you're not gonna escape. There have been times where he laughs and he'll do his little silly acts, and there's a chance that the person who's next to him might live. Very unlikely, but there's a chance. Versus when he has his sight set on someone and he is angry and visibly angry, you know that there's nothing that that person can do to escape the clutches of this very, very evil clown. I think he's much more menacing than Pennywise, even though he absolutely has none of the power that Pennywise has. I would be much more afraid in a room with Art than I would be with Pennywise, at least without knowing who either of them were. And with the sheer joy that comes from killing to Art the Clown, you are always on edge when he's around these mostly innocent people. Like I rarely run into victims in the Terrifier series that I felt were like, oh man, they were asking for it, you know? Like it's just, you feel so incredibly bad for these people, but you can't look away. When he's in the room, you're just like, oh man, it's over. But just look at that face. By far the most disturbing face in this video. He's like the sibling of that demon from like the Conjuring series, you know, the nun. Kind of have that same face. But just one last plug for Terrifier 3. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I love the Terrifier series. He is by far my favorite slasher, no question. Jason was my favorite for the longest. I have officially adopted a new favorite slasher, and Art the Clown is that. If you like slasher, it's on another level. It is absolute body horror made to make you disturbed and want to gag. Not for the faint of heart, but very entertaining if you're into that kind of thing. Homelander, or the Homelander from The Boys. Homelander is the reason I actually came up with this whole top 5. And it was a very tough call between placement for him and Art. They both give me kind of the same amount of creeps when it comes to their on-screen presence and their unpredictability. And even though Homelander's appearance-wise subtracts from what Art has, I put him in this spot because of his powers. The Boys is an Amazon series adapted from a comic book by the same name. The comic book in of itself is very violent, and it is definitely the inspiration for the level of violence the series has. It is kind of like the selling point for the series. It's just how bloody things are gonna get each season. And just like with Art, people who are into that kind of thing really root for it. But Homelander is the main antagonist to the group affectionately named The Boys, who are a ragtag group of marksmen and infantrymen who have come together to ultimately start the downfall of the Vought Company, which is responsible for generating superheroes for however many years through a substance called Compound V, which is applied at birth, and for the lucky individuals who it is applied to, develop superpowers, things we would consider superpowers. Homelander is the byproduct of this type of experiment gone wrong, and also the developing narcissism and mental instability of Homelander over his existence. How do you challenge an individual who fears nothing and is more powerful than anything on the planet as far as he knows? You don't. I mean, obviously the show is about these people challenging him, and to some degree that people are planning to get to a point where they can do it effectively. But outright face to face, there are very few characters who have not only shown the fortitude to talk back to Homelander, but have any chance of standing against him at all, which makes him a very uncomfortable force to be reckoned with. When he is on screen, knowing the type of person he is mentally creates for a very tense atmosphere, because he is always looking for ways to be a terrible person. He has a complex, and what he says goes. So whenever he is in a situation where he is with any other person that is not on his level, you are concerned and you are on edge, because he snaps on the drop of a hat, and his facial expressions can never show it coming. He's just instantly a different person. It doesn't help that maybe 60% of the time he's on screen, he is killing someone. So naturally, Homelander is an anxiety box. He's the kind of character you're gonna watch through your fingers a little bit. Portrayed by Anthony Starr, this character is essentially a knockoff of Superman, and the superhero group that Vought is in charge of, the Seven, is essentially like the Avengers, or the Justice League. Very popular show. I feel like most people have been watching it, or a lot of people have been watching it, especially anyone who's probably watching this video. The psychology of Homelander is one that is a deep dive into just people we have in our own world. He is the embodiment of what a lot of people consider the right to be. I don't feel that way. I don't feel like the majority of people on the right are narcissistic, psychotic lunatics. But I think it is important to note that the character, in its modern wake, was written to challenge essentially the GOP and anyone who sides with them. So there's a lot of collective energy in the character of Homelander that is tied to certain individuals who are in the White House that I will not mention here again. But in his own right, his energy is unmatched by a lot of characters in film. Watching him is always just waiting for him to become that ticking time bomb that he talks about. Right now, he's kind of docile because he likes the fame, but ultimately, once that blows up, he does make a regular point to acknowledge how nothing will stop him at that point. And that's a Homelander I wouldn't want to see. But last season of The Boys is coming up, so it's probably inevitable. Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. Written into existence by Cormac McCarthy, the same guy who created Judge Holden. It's no surprise that Anton Chigurh is an absolute menace. In the Ethan and Joel Coen film by the same name, Anton is a hitman hired by a group of unknown individuals to track down some money that has been stolen by the main character played by Josh Brolin. Brain fart. I think his name was Llewellyn. During the time that he is tracking this briefcase with all this money down, he makes several stops along the way. And off the bat, the reason Anton is in the number 5 spot is because he is the most realistic world threat you can imagine from this list. He is the experience that us as human beings are most likely to encounter in our lifetime. And that's terrifying, because Anton Chigurh is the walking embodiment of chaos. He is a character that has absolutely no remorse, no empathy, at least not in the way that a normal human would. We might see a tinge of it, but it's not really there. He's also psychotic, but in a very dark and brooding way. way. Anton has a very unique approach to his kills. Anyone that he runs into, his fate can be decided via the toss of a coin. Depending on how that coin lands, you are either spared or he takes you out. And anyone who has seen the film can tell you that Javier Bardem's approach to that character makes those moments much more terrifying than they sound. Imagine being approached by this behemoth of a man and not having any idea of what his intentions are after he tells you to call heads or tails in the most quiet but deep voice that you've ever heard. Call it. Call it. And again, I will go out and say that the moments with Homelander on screen are definitely more uneasy than the ones with Anton, but the ones with Anton are ones that you can truly envision. You're not gonna run into a superhero that can smash your head open like a grape, but you could very well end up on the other side of a door of a man who has a shotgun with a giant silencer on it, who can kick your door in and take you out at any moment. We are introduced to Anton when he first murders an officer who takes him into custody right before he steals the officer's car. And we get an extended shot of Anton Chigurh making the only other expression he makes in the entire film while he murders this cop with his bare hands. It sets the tone for the rest of the film. Knowing the power of this individual, knowing what he's capable of, knowing how clearly psychotic he is from that look in his eyes, you know that anyone who runs into him is going to experience a challenge if they even put up a fight. And that is what we expect throughout the entire film. Anytime he's in a room with an innocent person, anytime he's in the room with someone who's not so innocent, but we know they have no chance, you're on the edge of your seat, you're breathing, you're panicking for that person. And just to know that it could be you in that seat in real life makes Anton so much more terrifying than the other characters in this list. I mean, I guess Joseph's character is very realistic as well, but that's a trap you're just waiting to walk into. With Anton, he can be that guy that walks up to your counter in your store or walks past you in a hotel or whatever. If you're in his way, he's gonna move you out of the way. Or you can not be in his way, but he can decide that you need to be judged right then and there. Scary stuff. I feel like that film created a certain amount of awareness around other human beings, because we're not all built the same. We're not all made the same. There are some truly terrifying people out there. There are some very unstoppable people out there. Physically unstoppable people, scary people, and it is important to keep your eyes peeled for things like that. I'm not trying to make this a PSA, I'm just saying Anton Chigurh is the perfect villain in a lot of ways. So thank you all for joining me for another Fog Top 5. I'm liking the energy that I'm creating around doing these videos. I really appreciate any likes or subscribes that you can give me. I'm trying to get to 300 subscribers. It's the little things, but these are big things to me. And I appreciate any sharing, comments you can give me. Tell me who your favorite on-camera screen menace is. Who makes you most uncomfortable when you watch them? I'm gonna have another one of these because I can think of a ton of characters, but these were just the first 5 that came to mind. Show some love. I work really hard on these videos, and I'm really hoping that you're enjoying what I'm putting out. So just let me know if you like it, or if you don't, just say so. I just want to learn and get better at this. I'll look forward to seeing you on the next Fog Top 5, and until then, thank you for joining Fields of Gold, where the vision is at hand.